So what's this about? You know, if you're trying to buy something or find a friend or a romantic partner, you name it, right? We all face information overload problems. There are millions, maybe billions of options available in the world. What's the best match? Well, in a large number of contexts now, we have online personalized recommender systems that help us find stuff that we want. Nowadays, most major job boards use these pretty sophisticated algorithms. They do them to both suggest jobs to workers, right? When you log on, and it sort of shows you some jobs that you might be interested in, and also to recommend workers to recruiters. What do we know? Well, in other contexts, we know that recommender systems can create information silos. I remember the early days of Pandora. I would, put in a few songs, and then they'd send me like 1,000 songs that sounded exactly the same, and they can lower quality information to smaller groups of the population. They can perpetuate stereotypes. What's going on in job markets? Well, because most job recommender systems, not all of them, some of them are run by governments, and you can sort of get inside. Most job recommender systems are proprietary, so we don't know very much about what they're actually doing and what information in workers' resumes and in job content that they use. So what do we do here? We're going to do an audit study, but we're going to do a new kind of audit study. We're going to audit not people, we're going to directly audit algorithms. We're going to audit the algorithms. The goals are two things. First of all, measure the causal effect of a job seeker's gender on the jobs that they get to see, the jobs that are displayed to them when they log on to the site. And we want to push a little bit further. We want to try to learn a little bit about just how are these algorithms working? What pieces of information in the worker's resume, for example, are they relying on? And what sort of algorithmic processes are they using to make their recommendations? The study is done on the 4 largest job boards in China. Shuo actually interned for 2 summers in one of these 4 job boards, so she has some internal knowledge, and her knowledge is much greater in China, so that's why we're working there. What do we do in a little more detail? We're going to create profiles on these job sites, sign up as a job seeker, and we're going to create essentially identical male and female worker profiles. These workers are going to be seeking jobs. They're going to have a certain industry occupation, cell that they are qualified in. They're going to be seeking jobs in the same industry occupation cell that they're in now. So that's important in the sense that, it's unlikely that our algorithms are going to be sort of recommending women disproportionately to, let's say, secretarial positions and men to driving positions. Most of the action here is going to be, within a very, the algorithms pretty much respect where you want to work, right? So the differences that we're going to detect are going to be which types of jobs within industry occupation cells that men and women get to see. Quick summary of our main results, because I probably won't get through everything. First of all, if you just ask, let's create these profiles and we just wait and see, what do you show us? Well, almost 88% of the job postings recommended to our identical male and female platforms are literally the same jobs. Okay, they're not same jobs. Among the jobs that differ, the remaining 12 or so percent, or 13%, the jobs recommended to women advertise somewhat lower wages and require a lot less experience. So currently what's going on here is that women are being directed towards, I would argue, likely jobs that are a little bit lower in the corporate hierarchy, requiring less experience and paying less. So these are significant, but maybe quantitatively not huge. Where we find a much bigger difference is in the words contained in the jobs that are recommended differentially to the women and the men. They differ dramatically and they reflect common gender stereotypes. And we're going to define gender stereotypes using sources that are completely external to our particular study. So we show that in a minute. Interestingly, these stereotypes are present before our applicants have taken any actions. So you're just going to create this profile. The job site sees that you're a woman because you have to input that information. And then it's going to show you things that are different than it would show to a man. I mean, at least among the 13% of jobs that are not exactly the same ones. Second set of results, a bit more preliminary, are what can we figure out about how these recommender algorithms work? Well, we are pretty sure that the algorithms must be using as an input the worker's declared gender in your profile. So in China, when you set up a profile, you are required to enter your gender. And I don't think you can lie, China does check on people quite a bit. So we think the recommender algorithms have to be using this. Why is that? Because we detect gender recommendation differences in what we call round zero, before our profiles have taken any actions. They haven't even looked at a job, clicked on one, they certainly haven't applied anything. At that time, right, the only difference between our fake male and female profiles is that declared gender. So they must be using this as an input, and they must, in terms of what types of algorithms they're working, they must use what we call based work job or worker similarity measures. Why is this? Well, because at the very beginning of the experiment, the algorithms face what computer scientists call the cold start problem. We know nothing about you because you haven't applied to anything, you haven't taken any actions. All I know about you is the information that you put into your profile. So they have to rely on the content of your profiles. All they can do, right? They can find job ads whose content matches the content of your profile. They can do a little more. They can find other worker profiles. They can find workers like me. And they can look, for example, at what those workers did in the past, right? But the algorithm has no choice. The only thing that it can rely on is your declared gender. So that struck us as pretty interesting. That's what we learned from round zero. In later rounds of the experiment, we have suggestive, I would say strongly suggestive evidence that the algorithms use recruiters' reactions to a job seeker's resume to recommend additional jobs to the. Why is this interesting? Well, if you think about search processes for consumer goods, or even information retrieval problems, these types of processes, the analogy to that just makes no sense, right? The pair of socks that is sitting on Amazon doesn't care who buys it, right? The piece of information that's sitting in the library or online doesn't care who reads it, right? But here we have workers perusing jobs, and those jobs are very particular about who they want to hire. So labor markets are matching markets, and we see evidence, I think, that supports this idea that recruiter preferences actually influence which jobs are recommended to workers. So that's a little interesting. I'm going to skip contributions. This is mostly just to, to tell editors what you do that other people don't. But the main thing is we argue that we extend the resume audit study to algorithms, not people. And we like algorithms audits because they're easy to conduct. They inconvenience machines, not people, so there's less of an issue with human subjects committees, and they're pretty easy to do, right? Because what you're creating here is content that is all machine readable. So our resumes are quite sparse compared to what you would create in a traditional audit study, because we're targeting the machines. So let me skip that and get right to our experimental design, given the short amount of time that's available. So we create these fictitious work profiles. four largest job-based platforms in China. The platforms have very similar interfaces to each other. To start, a worker creates a profile and then for free can search and apply for jobs. Once you create a profile, the job site creates what the employer sees. Right? It first creates these little summary cards, which is the first thing that the employer sees about you, that contains only 5 or 6 pieces of information about you, including the gender, incidentally. And then it also creates a longer form resume that the firm can see if it clicks on your summary card. These things all look exactly the same. They're formatted the same way. They are created by the job board. So there's no issue of like what kind of font and spacing did you use and so on. It's all sort of machine readable kind of stuff. Similar to Ben Cummins' job board, the employers buy options to post jobs. And importantly, for other work that we do with this data, they actually can process the applications that come in on the job boards, right? So they can do resume search, they can do resume processing, and they can even issue callbacks through the sites as well. All the platforms claim to use sophisticated algorithms to propose matches to both workers and firms. And we know for sure that they do in one of the 4 platforms where Shuo has interned. What do? Each platform, we identify 35 job types. A job type is a pretty narrow industry occupation cell. And they are used by workers, by workers to different jobs and their desired jobs. So we targeted job types with a lot of postings, a mix of female-intensive and gender-balanced and male types, and different levels of the hierarchy. This gives you a feel for what these occupation cells. So these are sort of different levels of maleness, and these are different levels of ranks in the company. Yeah. All right. So again, to remind you, the worker profiles are both qualified for and looking for jobs in each one of these cells. And we just enter all this stuff into the create an account menu. Jobs, we said this. Oh my gosh, I said all of this stuff. We can keep going. Our resumes come in pairs. The pairs are literally identical except for name and gender. And this is all kind of standard stuff, young and older versions of each things. I've said this as well. All the applicants live in the 4 major cities and are applying to jobs declare that they're looking for jobs in those 4 major cities. Everybody's currently got a job. These are our fake profiles, and we assign them wages, education, and experience that are, the modal or the mean ones for real resumes in their job type. Current company names are fictitious combinations, right, of city, industry, and a random name. All this. So to put it all together, on each of these 4 platforms, we created 4 resumes, young, old, man, female, male, female, in 35 job types and living in 4 cities. So we end up with 2240 profiles or resumes in all. So we create these. It takes a while, but after you finish creating them, there's still, nobody sees this until you press the publish button. So they're going to remain unpublished until, for a particular gender pair, they're going to hit the publish button at exactly the same time. And then the first thing we're going to do is just sit there and say, okay, what jobs do you show me based on what I put in my profile? So that's round 0. Simultaneously publish the profile, and all we do is record the top 20 jobs that are recommended to the 2 profiles. And just mostly think about male versus female. Then we want to learn a little bit more about, well, what would happen if our profile started behaving, started actually taking some actions on the job board. To ensure that we are measuring not the consequences of, men and women might have different application strategies, to make sure that that is not contaminating our estimates. We are going to force our male and female profile to follow essentially the same application strategy after round 0. What does that mean? They're just going to apply to the top 10 jobs that are displayed to them. Right? So if the women are displayed, get some slightly different jobs in the first round, they will apply to whatever is recommended to them, and so on. So so we'll record the top 10 jobs displayed. The profiles apply to all these jobs, and then still at the same time, we then say, okay, now I've submitted some applications, log off, immediately log back on again. Let's record the next top 10 jobs that are displayed. How different is that from before you took any actions? So I haven't got time to talk my way through this whole slide, but this is the experiment timeline. So we'll spend a lot of time talking just about round 0, where we just create the resumes, publish them simultaneously, and record the top 20 jobs. 2 weeks later, we open up the profiles again, record. We are able, a feature of the job board is that as a worker, every time you log in, it tells you how many employers viewed your resume since your last login. So we record that piece of information first. Then, of course, because you logged in, it's going to immediately show you some new jobs. We're going to record the top 10, apply to them, refresh your site, and then, oh, now what are you showing me after I've done my applications? And we're going to repeat this process again 2 more times. And the last time, just record the profile views. So we get to follow these applications across a number of rounds. And I think I've said these things, right? These are very naive application strategies. That's on purpose because we want to ensure that all the gender differences that we detect reflect algorithmic recommendations, not decisions made by the workers. So it's what our results from later rounds will reveal is what would happen if you logged on and then just followed the job's recommendation, the board's recommendations across multiple rounds of applications. They don't tell you what real workers would do because, right, real workers might see a bunch of very stereotyped, typical jobs and decide, well, that's not for me. And they have an opportunity to counteract that by their revealed application decisions. Or on the other hand, they could be more stereotypical than the ones we measure. So just to be aware of what this is telling us. I'm going to skip the sample characteristics. These are highly skilled workers relative to the rest of China. Their average desired wage, we have to enter that, by the way, and we set that equal to 20% more than their actual wage. So, and their actual wage was 2.5 times urban China's mean wage. So these job boards all cater to highly skilled people. It's not that important. Okay, so the first set of results I'm going to show you combines all 4. Everything I'm going to show you today combines all 4 job boards. It's almost certainly the case that the different boards use different algorithms, but we just haven't got to the point yet where we can sort of look at them individually. And also, for now, I'm going to show you just the results combining all 4 rounds of the experiment, 0 through 3 together. First thing, this is something that Shuo, I guess, gets from the computer science literature. There's something called a set difference rate, which is the share of job ads in a pair of top and recommendation lists. So, for example, suppose we collect 100 recommendations for each of our male and female profiles. Then the set difference rate is just the number of jobs recommended only to men. The women don't see those. Plus the jobs recommended only to women. The men don't see those. Those 2 numbers have to be the same because, right, we're just collecting 100 applications total. divided by 200, 2 times the number. So that's it. So another way of expressing it is just the number of male-only recommendations divided by the total number of recommendations per worker, which is equal to that. In any case, I showed you this result at the start. Combining all 4 job boards and all rounds of the experiment, the set difference rate was maybe less than we expected, 12.4%. So almost 88% of the jobs recommended to men and women were the same one. Okay, so, but now let's look at the jobs that were different, that were not the same ones. Were their characteristics different? So what we did here is restrict our sample to the recommendations that were unique to the male and female profiles within a pair, right? Because the ones that are shared have identical characteristics. And then estimate a very simple linear probability model where Y is a characteristic of job that's recommended to gender pair P. So it could be the education requirements, for example. And M is a dummy for whether the job was recommended to the male pair, the male in the pair, rather than the female in the pair. And because to sort of exploit the structure of the experiment, we put in gender pair fixed effects. So we're looking for differences within pairs. And this just estimates the gender gap, male minus female, in the characteristic between male-only and female-only recommendations within gender pair. There are some differences. They are not huge in magnitude. The male profiles were offered wages, were shown jobs that offer wages 3,000 renminbi higher. That works out to 1.5%, right? And they requested 0.16 more years of experience, which is 7.2%, and no difference in education requirements. So it looks like the jobs displayed to women are maybe a little bit lower in the corporate hierarchy. That's how we read these findings, but not a lot. So what about words? Here's where we see bigger differences. We start, as Benjamin was doing, some natural language software, and we identify the 172 most common words. And words is, of course, after doing all the stemming and so on. And words here can be multiple things, right? It could be like assistant manager could be a word, for example. Chunks in recommended job ads. So let's just find the most common words in the ads. Then we do this, we don't actually use this in the analysis at all, but to just sort of talk our way through the words, it's easiest to put them into 6 categories. And we did this manually. Standardized skills, we used the PIAC categorization, job benefits, work type and location, company and rank, other qualifications, things like, do you need Excel or something like that, and personality, age, and appearance. It's still like, well, you see the words in a second. So we got all the candidate words, all the most common words. Well, which words are overrepresented in the jobs recommended to men relative to women? What we do is go back to this equation where we did these, we estimated wage, education, and experience differentials, and we ran that equation 172 times. Each time the dependent variable was a dummy for the presence of one of those 172 words. So you're going to say, well, you run 172 regressions, you're bound to find at least, at least eight significant ones at 5%. So we deal with this. This used to be pretty hard computationally, but Shuo was really helped out here. We adjust all our significance thresholds for multiple hypothesis testing using a Romano-Wolf procedure. That controls the family-wise error rate. Okay, so let's look at the significantly overrepresented words in the two types of jobs. There's a lot of words here. I'll sort of categorize them more in a second. These are the skills, jobs that are words that are overrepresented in jobs recommended to women: listen, speak, write, assist, right, administrative, men, decision-making, planning, leadership, charge, supervise, 8-hour working days, right, night work, overtime, long travel for the men. Is there marriage leave, parental leave, all kinds of insurance type things for the women. For the men, are you paid by commission, right? Are there stock options, rewards, training for women? Nothing much going on there. And maybe just down to here, personality, age, and appearance. Women's job. Look at this. How many more on the women's side than the men's side? Be careful, patient, and not everything fits your stereotypes necessarily. Active, outgoing, generous, punctual. Your figure, literally your figure, right? Temperament and things about having a pleasant face. Face. Yeah, so that just gives you a feel for it, and we sort of read those, and they fit our most of our internal stereotypes, but we want to sort of classify the stereotypicity, if that's a word, of those words in a way that is external to our study and external to our preconceived notions as authors. So here's what we did. We went to 4 data sources and combined them all. It doesn't actually matter too much which ones we use, but we decided, I'm showing you the results when we combine all our different measures of what words are stereotypically male versus female. The first is a group of 3 published studies. One here, which predicts Canadian readers' perceptions of gender representation in ads. So they just show people some words, and they ask, well, what is this? Does that make you think of a man or a woman in the work context? We have this study that looks at explicit requests for men and women in Chinese job ads. So just pick words that predict whether the job ad requests men and women, and a parallel study to ours that was done in India. So these are just published things from previous results. Shuo conducted 2 little surveys, one of Chinese workers, just asking whether each of those 172 words, would you say that's more likely to appear in a job ad seeking a man or a woman? We also did the same thing on MTurk, and this is our latest edition. Shuo just finished doing that. We used ChatGPT. We asked ChatGPT literally this question: can you categorize each word in those following 6 categories? And then we show ChatGPT the 172 words. Could you categorize that word as neutral, male, or female? So our measure of how stereotypically male or female a word is, we're just gonna count. These are 4 different ways of defining stereotypicity. We're just gonna count the number of methods that classified the job as either male, or the word as either male or female. And so here's what that looks like. This is the same list of words that you saw before, right, in the same categorization. And dark red here means that all 4 of those data sources classified the word as female, and lighter shades of red mean 3 or fewer, depending on the shade, classified the word as female. Dark blue means all 4 data sources classified the word as male, and then lighter shades of blue, obviously less than that. So it's pretty clear, right? Red dominates on the left, and the blue dominates on the right. So we would argue that the words appearing in job ads that are recommended to men versus women, by and large, convey standard, very commonly held gender stereotypes. And so that's sort of the results from the first round of the experiment for gender differences in who gets to see which jobs. Let me show you a little bit about the trends across the rounds. We won't do a heck of a lot with this yet, but you should see them. So the set difference rate, the share of jobs, of recommended jobs that are different for men and women, starts out at 7.3 per 100 recommendations, jumps substantially between round 0 and round 1.1. Now that is actually kind of interesting because our profiles take 0 actions between creating their profile and the time they first log on 2 weeks later. And then it climbs. This is after they submitted their first round of applications and keeps climbing monotonically. But there's this surprising jump over a 2-week period in which the ads are doing nothing. They're literally taking no actions. All we're doing is logging off, waiting 2 years, and logging back on again. Yeah, let's see. Gender wage gap does increase across rounds, significant at 10%, but sort of not huge, not a lot going on there. And no evidence at all for growing our education experience gaps across the rounds. But mirroring our previous results, there are some things going on for the words. And the action in the words, again, surprisingly, is in this first interval between sort of creating the profiles, logging off, and then logging on again 2 weeks later, right? Sky over here is the difference in the number of female versus male words in jobs that were recommended only to men. So obviously, there's a deficit. Over here in the first round, and then that jumps down to a deficit of 1.6 female versus male words after the first round, and then sort of bounces up again. And this is, again, the same thing, but in reverse. This is, again, the difference between the number of female versus male words in jobs that were recommended only to women. Well, there's a surplus of female words in jobs recommended to women. It's about 0.7 words at the beginning. This jumps up to about 1.1 words after the first round, and then kind of tails off as well. So it looks like there is some growth in the male jobs have become more male in terms of the words that they contain, and the female jobs become more female in the words that they contain. But the action's all in this first interval. Okay. So now how am I doing for time? I'm going? Okay, maybe I can go be slightly less. We want to learn something about how are the job boards actually coming up with these recommendations? What information are they using as inputs? We've already described our results there. And what algorithmic processes are they using to create the recommendations? So we're going to do this separate. First, looking just at round 0. Round 0, in some sense, is the cleanest part of our experiment, because all we do is create the profiles, and then we sit there and we wait. What do you show us, right? At that time, the only worker-specific information available to the algorithms is the contents of that profile. And the only difference between our male and female profiles is their declared gender. So what can an algorithm in principle do with this resume content? Well, the most obvious thing is the worker has 14 years of education, match the worker to jobs that request 14 years of application. So they can compute worker job similarity scores, cosine based or whatever, and then adjust jobs with time match. It could, in principle, do more. It could match. It could. Okay, yeah. let's look at other workers that have a degree from University X, and I don't know, and have a similar required salary to you, whatever. Find workers like you, and then you could look at the jobs that those workers applied to in the past. But you can't start this process without using the content in this resume to find similar workers. Good workers, and look at how recruiters responded to those workers. So let's, I'll find somebody that looks like you, and here's a recruiter or here's a job that, was very friendly to that worker. I can recommend that job. But again, you can't start this process without using the gender field in the resume. Right? So it means, and I guess I've already said this, is that gender recommendations in round 0 mean that, first of all, the algorithms have to be using content-based recommendations. That's important because some of the most important algorithms, like on shopping sites, don't use content at all. We'll talk about those in a second. So they're using content-based recommendations, and they're using the worker's gender field as an input. So that's kind of cool. So some direct evidence of what's going on in round 0. I need to establish to you that there are gender gaps just in round 0, not combining. Before I just showed you aggregate results for all the rounds. So I'm just redoing that and getting similar results. In round 0, the jobs recommended to men pay a little more. Now, this time it's not statistically significant, require more experience. The jobs recommended to men contain fewer female birds and more male birds. So yeah, it looks like this is going on in round 0. And here I've recommended the table that you saw before using just recommendations in round 0 of the process, and the same sort of thing comes out. Red on this side, blue on that side. Okay, so I think we learned something pretty useful about what information the job boards are using, right? And certainly many countries in the United States, it would be illegal to use somebody's declared gender as an input to an algorithm deciding which jobs to recommend. The Chinese job boards seem to be using that information. Going on in the other rounds, well, you can continue to make content-based matching in those other rounds, but it's not going to help us account for those systematically increasing difference rates that we saw in later rounds, or rising word gaps. Why is that? That's because the resume content is just a static thing, and it's matched to other stuff on the board, which changes, right? There's always a flow of new jobs coming on, and there's always a flow of new, potentially similar workers coming in, but the content itself is static. So there's no reason to expect that recommendation gaps would continue to grow if only content-based matching was used, right? Assuming that the new aggregate content, the flow of new workers and the flow of new jobs is the same for male and female. So this suggests that some additional processes are at work. What can they be, right? Well, we thought about this a lot, and we could be wrong, but we think we've identified all the main possibilities. And there's certainly all the main possibilities that Schroen knows of, having been on the inside here. Two possibilities are based on workers' behavior. They're going to use the actions that a worker took in the past. What did you click on? Which jobs did you click on, right? Which jobs did you apply to? Which jobs maybe you downloaded, whatever. They're going to use the workers' previous actions to recommend more actions. So this would be like if you're shopping on Amazon, and Amazon says, oh, let me show you more products like the one you just clicked on. Right? So let me show you more jobs like the one you just applied to or the one you just clicked on. Very simple algorithm. Right? The other thing a board could do in principle is is tell you this. Well, you know, you just applied to this job. People who applied to this job also applied to these other jobs. So here we're using Ben Cummings' co-applicants to generate recommendations. This process is I may be saying more than I know, but the dominant one on a lot of retail sites, it has a name. It's called item-based collaborative filtering. And what it does is notice it doesn't need any information from the content of your resume. It doesn't need any information about the content of the job. All it does is say, I'm going to find people who looked at the same job or product that you did, and use that. That's why it's collaborative filtering. Use that to recommend other jobs to you. Yeah. So those are two possibilities. These are based on the worker's previous behaviors. Okay. So we're gonna look at the evidence of this now. Maybe our test is too strict, but we don't find much. The way we look at this is we're going to look. If I can hop back just for a second, we're going to look within what we call our rounds 1, 2, and 3. Maybe I can just do this in words rather than going back to the figures. So in round 1, right, first our profiles log on again, and we just see what jobs are recommended to them. Right? Then we apply to the top 10 jobs that are recommended to us, log off, log back on again, and then see what jobs are you recommending to me now. So what happens is 10 new applications are submitted, and the algorithms could, in principle, right, immediately recommend similar jobs or jobs previously applied to by co-applicants. It could do that immediately because it just says, oh, here's the job you applied to, here's another one like it. Right? So this would isolate sort of worker behavior. The potential for recruiters to react in those few seconds before the applications are submitted, we log off and then log back on again, is negligible. So this should sort of isolate the effects of worker behavior-based recommendations. And we don't find any significant growth of gender recommendation gaps between these rounds. I'll show you some pictures with huge standard errors for our main outcome variables, and there's just very little going. There's very little sort of divergence between the genders going on between those parts of the experiment. So not much direct evidence that item-based collaborative filtering, the stuff that's the bread and butter of retail sites, is operative on these boards. Right. What about algorithms based on the behavior of recruiters? So how could that work? Well, one thing a board could do, all the job boards that we're looking at have not just a worker search feature, but they also have a feature that lets employers, recruiters, search resumes. They have resume search portals. Well, we could look at jobs that found you, right? By using recruiters via the resume search portal, and just recommend those jobs to you, right? Maybe they found you, but they haven't yet. They haven't invited you to apply. They just sort of found you. Or you could go a little bit further and look at where you applied previously, and see how recruiters reacted to you, and then recommend similar jobs. So we can also use the behavior of the recruiters. Evidence of this, surprisingly strong, I think. So here, instead of looking at the differences within the rounds, like 1.1 versus 1.2, we're going to look at changes in recommendations between round 0 and round 1.1, those large gaps that I showed you at the very beginning of the process, both for difference rates and also for the differences in standard words. During that 2-week interval, I've probably said this too many times already, workers have taken no actions at all. Just create the profile, right? We collect the information on what's recommended, shut down the profile, wait 2 weeks, open up the profile again. That's all the workers have done. Right? But during that interval, right, their resumes are now public. They became public at the very start of the recruiters are actually free to search those resumes, right? So they could be using this process. Well, the disproportionate increase in the set difference rate between these two rounds and strongly suggests that resume searchers by recruiters, what else could it be, account for some of the gender gaps that we observe. Yeah, and let's see, what am I going to show you here? Yes, just some quantitative evidence, focusing now just on that first interval, round 0 versus 1.1. We are looking at, let me see if I can read this right. This is the gender gap, counting in the number of male minus female words in round 0. This is right. Oh, no, sorry. This is the gender gap between male and female resumes in round 0, in the number of female words in the ads that were suggested to them, and the number of male words that were suggested to them. So obviously, men are going to get fewer job ads they're going to get job ads with fewer female words in them. That's in round 0. In round 1, that gap rises. They're going to get the female words are even more underrepresented in the jobs that men see in round 1.1. And that difference is highly statistically significant. And the parallel thing is going on here. These are, men see more male words in round 0 than women do. That difference increases, and the increase across rounds in the difference, this stuff is hard to keep track of sometimes, is also statistically significant. Right? A second thing that we do to support this idea that, or to explore this idea that recruiters' reactions are responsible for the gender gap, the gender gaps in recommendations, is we use that piece of information I told you about, right? Every time we log in, we can collect for our profiles, how many times was your profile viewed by recruiters in the past? We don't know who viewed it, but we have a count, and we have that each time. So what can we do here? For now, we just do this aggregating across all rounds of the experiment. And we're going to consider the association. This is just an interpersonal, it's going to be like, I think 1,100 observations here, one for each resume pair. Consider the association between the total number of views of resumes in the male-female profile pair. How often was that looked at by recruiters? And what's the gender gap in recommendations that they receive? And so this correlation is positive for the difference rate for the posted wage, nothing for education and experience, but I believe, oh, okay, I guess we don't have the results for gendered words here. I'm sorry about that. Oh yeah, this is still to come. So there appears, at least here, to be some prima facie evidence, suggestive evidence that the more often the recruiters look at the profiles in a gender pair, the more different are the recommendations to the men and the woman within that gender pair. But this is just, it's just suggestive at this point. So just to summarize the results from rounds 1 to 3, we find stronger evidence for recruiter-based processes than worker-based processes. That would be a very unusual result for shopping algorithms. We consider whether the item would like to be purchased by a man or a woman. It makes a lot of sense in labor markets. These things are doing more than just looking at workers' preferences. They're also looking at who's likely to want me when they're doing their recommendations. So I can summarize the whole thing. We've done an audit study of not people, but job recommendation algorithms. They are the subjects of our study. They are widely used, but little studied. Recommendation algorithms affect where workers apply, but they don't necessarily affect the individual worker's preferences, right? Workers can apply to jobs that they don't see, right? And we have lots of results on workers' application behavior, including Ben Cummins, but many others, showing that men apply to these types of jobs and women apply to those types of jobs. Well, that could be because men like these jobs and then women like these jobs, but we have to start asking, who gets to see those jobs in the first place, right? The gender differences in application behavior that we see, in part, could be due to the behavior of algorithms, not choices made by the individual worker. So I think that's worth thinking about. You've seen all these things, key findings, and because this is a keynote address, I can say, I can be more speculative than I normally would, and say some broader points. I've been doing economics for a long time, and I was told, well, the actors in the economy are firms, households, and governments. Well, we have a new set of economic actors, and they are algorithms. They're making choices. They're, and we need to think of them as economic actors and learn what decisions they make, how do they work. There's two ways to do this: the insider approach. Here's a couple of papers that I cite. Danielle Lee at MIT is working with a company. She's not studying job recommender algorithms, but she's studying employee selection algorithms. So selection algorithms are used when you have a pool of applicants and candidates, and you're trying to choose whom to interview or whom to look further. And they can actually design an alternative, algorithm and evaluate it. Altman et al. Do the same thing in, now is it Swedish or Danish? I should know. These are national job boards. So they actually can design an algorithm that recommends jobs to workers and evaluate it. So that is obviously an important approach. The other approach is, outsiders can do algorithm audits. And in fact, I would argue that, the people who write these programs often don't really know why they're doing what they're doing, right? They don't know what their effects are. So I would argue maybe they do this, right? You can, if you design an algorithm and want to see, is it really discriminatory? Well, you could actually run an audit on your own algorithm and see what it spits out. So these algorithm audits have been used by computer scientists. This is a paper that for a while we thought scooped us. I'll tell you about it in a second. But I would argue that economists can not only benefit from algorithm audit studies, but contribute to them as well. So let me tell you about the almost scoop here. This is a study that was done on Facebook. And the authors purchased, and this is pretty cool design. They purchased job ads to be shown on Facebook. And then they also created sort of, Facebook user profiles so that they can log on and then see, well, is Facebook showing me these things? So and what they found was huge gender differences, but of a particular form. The men were being showed many more job ads than the women of all types. Right? The reason turned out to be, well, Facebook is not really, right, it's not a job search site, right? It's mostly a consumer shopping site. Well, it turns out on Facebook, ads for everything, jobs versus, toys, clothes, all have to compete for the eyes of viewers. Right? Well, women's eyes are more expensive on Facebook than men's because they do more shopping. So the women weren't seeing the sites simply because there was more profitable things to show the women, and right. So, so they sort of did the same thing that we did, but on a very idiosyncratic sort of place to be looking for work. So that's where we are, and thank you for your attention. Yeah. And, yeah. Yes, please. Oh. Yeah, I guess.
So thanks a lot. Absolutely fascinating stuff. I have a couple of questions, and one is, are companies paying different amounts to have their ads viewed either by a more targeted population or by more people? I'm just kind of wondering, the few jobs that I've had to post for sociology, I mean, you pay a fixed amount to the ASA, and then you pay more if you want it to be seen by more people. And I'm kind of assuming that in these profitable companies, there could be some employer decisions that are going on in the quality of the algorithm essentially that's getting applied.
Right, so they could try to promote their jobs higher in the workers' search results. I happen to know that workers can do that on some of these sites. They can buy a premium membership that bumps their resumes up higher. I don't know the answer to your question for the employer, so I'll have to ask Shul about that.
And then another question that I had, sort of related to this, is that I'm struck by how stupid the job algorithm generated ads that I get are. Like, so I recently just got one, actually this last week, for somebody wanting me to apply to be an assistant professor of fluid engineering at Syracuse University, which is about an hour and a half away from where I live. That is the only thing that's in common, because otherwise, I mean, it's somebody who does not know the academic labor market at all. And I'm sort of wondering if the algorithms are also learning by the non-response, right? So your people are basically, they're applying to 10 ads, but they're presumably not your fake people. They're applying to 10 ads, but they're presumably not following up if an employer says, hey, do you want to talk to me more about this job, right? So there's sort of there might be some non-response learning that's going on as well that's affecting what people are seeing.
I'm sure that's the case, and I just want to clarify, we're pretty sure that the algorithms are not just looking at application decisions, but they see where recruiters click, which resumes they click on, and which ones they download. So it's a wider spectrum of employer behavior. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. This is just amazing research. I'm so inspired, and
thank you.
I'm kind of jealous in a positive way that I haven't come up with this idea myself. It's amazing research design. I was wondering, I have a very primitive question. So when you were designing these 2,240 resumes, so do I understand correctly that they were all identical, and the difference was only between men and, but one belonged to men, another to women, or did you also group them in some sort of like categories? This is more male, this is more female, and then see how it responds to these characteristics of resumes. And
can I answer that before I forget? So within an industry occupation cell, and within and we have young and old versions of the same profile. So within an age group, the male and female profiles are literally identical except for the person's name. And remember that they are searching for jobs in the same industry occupation cell that they currently live in. So they are literally identical. We did try to expand when we chose the cells. We tried to span, jobs that were industry occupation cells that were highly male and highly female, and high versus low in the corporate hierarchy. I haven't showed you any of those results because we find surprisingly little. And I think the reason is all the action is sort of within these industries. They're not, I think the boards respect the industry occupation cell a lot. And they just show you different jobs within those categories, and the biggest differences are in the words contained.
I was also very happy and excited to see that you have used the most recent technologies in your analysis, such as ChatGPT, to categorize.
That was 100% Schwab, I should say.
And then another fun question. I was wondering, how did you manage to submit at the same time 2,240 applications? Or how many?
Oh no, they weren't all submitted at the same time. Only within the gender pair did they go in together. Yeah. So she started. So round 0 is at different calendar times for our different, for different job boards possibly, and but the pairs all go in together, and our analysis is within pair.
Can I ask another question? You had these findings where you showed, it was the slide 33, where you showed how...
Should I go back?
How it changes between these rounds, and then male applications got more male respond, and female
I can't seem to go anywhere. Oh, there we go.
Or 33 or 30, no, 36.
Sorry. No, that looks boring. Oh, this one. Yeah.
How do you interpret it? Like, why would one become more male, another more female, or less female? How do you? Can you repeat a bit about this?
Yeah, sorry. So this is just counting the difference between the number of female words and the number of male words in male-only jobs. Right? So a job that we're seeing only to men within the gender pair. And obviously there's a deficit of female-only words, right? Of female words. And then starting at the beginning of the experiment, and then the deficit becomes greater. So the male profile sees fewer female words. Yeah. I think, right, what's going on between round 0 and round, you mean this change? Or do you mean this entire difference, the fact that these numbers are all less than 1? Well, we know that in round 0, it has to be coming via the content. It's looking at the words contained in the profiles, and for example, male resumes might more often say, "I crave leadership and competition," in the text portion, and ads for men would say the same thing. So part of it is that. No, sure, yeah.
Taking advantage of the microphone. Thank you so much. It's amazing work to learn. So I wonder if when you get the suggestive jobs, is it the prevalence of the words? So like the most suggestive. So if I apply and I see the jobs that I should, they recommend me to apply.
Yes.
Is it the first one is like the most likely fit to you, compared to like the 10 in the list that I don't get to see? You know what I mean? Like it's kind of the likely, is it the prevalence of those words? Can you say something like count or something?
We haven't done a lot with that. We have this thing called the set difference rate. This is our main thing. There's also something that folks use in this literature called the list difference rate. And it takes into account the rankings. And obviously there's, matching the same list is a lot harder than, matching the count. So the match rates are smaller, but, all the main results, they look the same. The results for list difference. Oh, yeah. The results for list difference rates look very similar to the results for set difference rates, just with the different magnitude in the outcome variable, if that makes sense. Yeah. Oh.
Hi. So the algorithm seems to be very responsive to stated gender during round 0. And then
stated gender of the worker.
Yeah, of the worker. Yes. And then it puts out in the rounds 1 to 3 gendered or coded language for the positions that it offers. So I was wondering if you experimented with using set language, set words that it put out across genders. So maybe having a woman that presents a resume with male-specific characteristics versus men with a resume that is stereotypically female according to the words that the algorithm already gendered.
Yeah. So this is on the agenda, but we probably won't get there for a while. But right, all we're doing here is looking at what happens if I just do what the job board suggests that I do. I want to introduce women who don't want stereotypically female jobs and see to what extent, by applying to jobs other than the ones that are recommended, they can steer the algorithm in a different direction. So yeah, we probably won't get there for a couple of years, but I'd like to know the answer to that. I think. Last.
Thank you so much. Super interesting. I'm really curious about the results, how they vary between the younger and older applicants, especially for women in terms of childbearing age. Do you have any insights on that yet?
So we, Schwo and I and a third co-author actually have a paper called "The Age Twist" in employers. What is it? The age twist in employers' gender preferences, and there all we're looking at is the explicit age requests in job ads, which are still very common in much of the developing world, and looking at how those, how employers' gender preferences vary with the age of the worker, and there's just amazing flip between the age of, let's say, 25 and 32. Jobs requesting women strongly outnumber jobs requesting men below that, and the opposite is true later in life. So, but that's from a different methodology. And we have the different age groups, and again, we don't find huge effects. So I haven't shown you any of those. Yes. Yes. We should, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I will do that. Yeah. Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you. Keep